Hey everyone, today we're going to do something a little bit different. Now, we're not going to talk about Bitcoin or the stock market or how inflation is killing your babies. Today, we're going to talk about cigarettes. And this is not just any ordinary cigarette, this is a TAAT cigarette. A TAAT cigarette is a cigarette that smokes, smells, and tastes just like a tobacco cigarette, but with no tobacco and no nicotine. And mind you, while I haven't smoked one of these myself, we have some parts of this video where we'll go into, a bit of a review of how these smell. But the reason that you're here for this video is because this is a company that is trading publicly that I think has tremendous growth potential, and I want to share that with you. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that my standards for investing in things is pretty high. I'm a Bitcoin guy, so I'm used to seeing, 100 to 200% on average in a year. And so when I talk about investments in stocks, I'm really going after things that are really high in growth potential. And I think this company is currently being completely overlooked by the market. It's not that it's doing anything wrong, it's just that it's so small of a company and such a small footprint at this moment that I think it has an asymmetrical upside from here of 5, 10, wherever your mind can take you, X. And I'd really like to share this about the company. Of course, we're going to dive into the potential risks of them not getting to that state. But for the most part, we're going to talk about why I'm extremely bullish on this company, go over all sorts of things like the management, what type of industry they're tackling. And yeah, instead of me just talking forever, let's just dive into it. So in this video, we're going to go over a few things. We're going to talk about what is TAAT as a company, what is the problem that their unique product is solving, and how big is the tobacco market, the market that they're taking on, and the size and scope of what TAAT is trying to do. What does their executive team look like? What are some of the milestones that you should look for TAAT moving forward? What are the risks of investing into TAAT, because it can't all be, candy and sugar plums? And what will the growth and evolution of the company look like moving forward? Now, full disclosure before we jump into this video, I am not an insider of any sort. I do not have any insider information of this company. All of this stuff is just my opinion based off of publicly available information about TAAT, the company, either through things like Sadar or just their investor relations. But to be fully upfront with everyone, I did produce some of the investor videos for TAAT, and we've worked with TAAT through my video production company to produce a few marketing videos. One's just of the CEO and the founder talking about the origins of the company, and you can look at those down below, but in no way have they paid me to make this presentation whatsoever. And I think by the end, I don't think they would want to pay me, because we're going to go over some of the risks and things that might be a little bit troublesome to the TAAT thesis, and things that I personally have questions about too. So TAAT has really only been active as a public company in the last year, and they've come to prominence because they've created what they say is a cigarette that smokes, smells, and tastes just like a tobacco cigarette without any of the tobacco and any of the nicotine. Now, instead of using any tobacco, TAAT has primarily formulated the cigarette out of a base hemp material, and they've used other elements in their formulations to basically emulate the flavor, the smoke, the taste of a real cigarette. They've patented this formulation and they've launched it in several names, but it mainly goes by TAAT or Beyond Tobacco, in which they've created this thing that, again, has nearly identically replicated the taste of a real cigarette. Now, later in the video, I've gotten a hold of my friend Brett, who is going to make an appearance because he actually got a hold of these cigarettes for me, and he's going to give a little bit of insight as to how they taste, his kind of review on it, and some of his experience after giving this product out to other people and what they thought of it as well. So what is the problem that TAAT is solving? Well, just to start off, TAAT is a US-based company. But the problems that they're solving are in the tobacco industry, which is a massive industry worldwide. But for the purposes of this video, we're mainly going to focus on the US market, which they're starting in on and trying to tackle first. So just some stats on the US. The US tobacco market was valued at over $100 billion in 2018, and the international tobacco market valued at about $800 billion. And to dive into a bit of statistics, about 14% of adults in the US consider themselves smokers. That's about 34 million people as of 2018. And around 55% of these people report per year that they have attempted to quit smoking, with only about 7.5% successful in doing so. Now, if you know about cigarettes and you know about the whole industry there's one clear thing that has been disruptive in the last few years, and that has been vaping. Now, a few statistics about vaping, which I've written down here, we'll go over. It's about a $40 billion industry, and it has grown to be the most popular alternative to cigarettes over things like gum, patches, inhalers, and other types of cigarettes without tobacco that still have the nicotine. Now, Juul commands about 75% of their market, You've probably heard of Juul, you know what a Juul pod is. And they have gotten into a lot of hot water through their e-cigarettes and through things like marketing and state regulations and a lot of health concerns, which we'll dive into as well. The average pod of vapor contains about the same amount of nicotine as an entire pack of tobacco, which means on average, the average vape smoker might actually be consuming more nicotine through vaporizers than through just smoking regular cigarettes. And as vaping grows in popularity, it has been regulated like a tobacco product. There have been a lot of excess taxes on it. There are a lot of health concerns. The advertising isn't as free-willy as it used to be. It's started to become more treated like a cigarette and tobacco product. And in some senses, it's actually sparked up enough scrutiny in Washington that it's being treated as something more severe potentially as well. There's also studies that show that young adults who start out with vaping as their primary method of intaking nicotine are 4 times as likely to revert to cigarettes, combustible cigarettes as we know them. And that also means that cigarette to vape users are not sticky. Many of them go back to cigarettes after having their vape experience, let's just say. So in terms of it being a smoking cessation product, it's not really that great. You're still getting a lot of nicotine. Maybe you're not getting the tobacco, but it's still keeping you hooked and addicted in some way. Now, TAAT is a little bit different because their objective is to help with smoking cessation, remove the tobacco and the nicotine from the equation, and just have the experience, the feeling of smoking a cigarette with none of those common carcinogens. And that's not to say that TAAT cigarettes are, free in the water. Of course, inhaling anything comes with its own set of risks, but without the tobacco and without the nicotine, it is on all measures objectively safer than cigarettes. In fact, because hemp products are legal across the US, these can be sold next to normal cigarette cartons in a convenience store, and they're subject to a lot lower tax. Where a regular pack of cigarettes might cost between $12 to $18, maybe even $20, a pack of TAAT cigarettes at the moment retails for about $4.99 US. Regular cigarette products are taxed at around maybe 70 to 75%, depending on state taxes and sales tax. TAAT is not subject to those. This also means that TAAT can advertise their product on e-commerce platforms and billboards and all sorts of ways a lot more freer with a lot less restrictions. And there are also some added benefits to CBD being the main psychoactive ingredient in TAAT cigarettes. Now, while it's not like smoking a CBD or a THC cigarette, you're not going to get crazy high or anything like that. The trace amounts do have some health benefits. There is kind of this uplifting mood that a lot of people have reported after smoking TAAT cigarettes. And of course, when it comes to CBD and terpenes, there are secondary metabolites too that can prove very effective and good for your health. But again, none of this stuff FDA approved. TAAT is not going to openly advertise this stuff, but it's just something that is kind of cool to know about the product itself. Now here's where things get exciting, because when you look at the size of the tobacco market and what a product like this could represent, and it being the only one of its class right now, this is where everything about TAAT starts to get really exciting. And I've done some mental math here I've written down, and of course they've done some in their investor presentation as well. But let's just make some assumptions here. There are about 38 million smokers in the US currently. The median amount of cigarettes consumed per day by them is about maybe 10 cigarettes or half a pack. Kind of depends who you ask, but there's quite a few smokers that do a pack or more a day and quite a few who do less than 10. So let's just say it's 10, and that would probably be on the low end. If TAAT captures about 380,000 of these smokers, or about 1% of the smoking population in the US, they consume about 1 pack every 2 days, or about 180 packs a year. If TAAT captures that, 380,000 smokers, 180 packs a year, that's about $273 million in sales revenue in just 1 year. And just for perspective, right now, the company is only launching their cigarette product in Ohio as kind of a test market, and the company is valued at about $300 million as of the making of this video. So there's a lot of potential for them to grow, and I'm not going to make any forward-looking statements, even though I probably kind of have, but just that stat alone, and we're just talking about the US at the moment. TAAT has ambitions to go internationally, where there are a lot more smokers and more dense smoking populations as compared to the general populace. All these things combined make TAAT really compelling, and it's kind of an idea where once they get this product out there, once people know about it, and assuming that most people even watching this video had never heard about it, it just goes to show that if something like this really takes off, the potential of this company is, I don't want to say limitless, but a lot higher than what it's valued at today. So I want to do a little bit of a walkthrough through their investor presentation. I will link it down below in the description if you want to kind of read through it yourself. I'm going to kind of probably skim through it, but it'll just give you a bit of a glimpse on where TAAT sees their company going, and I'll give you some of my commentary with that as well. So just diving into this presentation right now, we're going to see what TAAT is like at a glance. Basically, they have an innovative product, which is this hemp cigarette. It's designed to mimic the tobacco smoking experience. They still have a large industry that they're tackling. Even though the cigarette and the smoking industry is shrinking, which is good for everyone's health in the long run, it's still a massive industry right now. They have a scalable production platform. They're currently expanding. They have about a 25,000 square foot facility in Las Vegas. I think they're producing something like 16,000 cartons of cigarettes per day. But obviously, to meet demand, they're going to have to scale a lot bigger. They have a managed rollout, and this is something that I'm very bullish on. Instead of them trying to just explode all over the country, they're kind of going one market at a time and growing it gradually, which is great. They've launched in Ohio in mid-December. So this product has only really been selling in one main state. You have to order it online if you want it elsewhere for about 3 months of the making of this video. They have a strong management team. Seti Coscarella, who is the CEO, who we'll talk about later as well, he has experience in the reduced risk section at Philip Morris. So he's bringing some of that experience over, which is interesting. I'm sure Philip Morris probably misses that. In fact, they do miss it. I think my friend Brett actually was talking about how in Philip Morris's latest presentation, they use the term beyond nicotine, which TAAT has a patent to. So it's not to say right now TAAT is probably one of the only people making hemp-like tobacco cigarettes, or tobacco-like hemp cigarettes, but in the future other companies will be doing it as well, and that's something that we'll dive into. And win-win economics, better returns for retailers because the taxation isn't so high on the product, and the product can be sold a lot cheaper. It's a lot more appealing for consumers, it's a lot more appealing for retailers, and so there's win-win economics for everyone involved in getting with this product. So yeah, to talk about market share, their stats are going to be a little bit different than mine, but more or less in the same ballpark. But essentially, they have about a $925 billion US tobacco market worldwide. The US market is maybe about $75 billion, and it holds about 3% of smokers. Their mental math here is that 1 pack per day per cigarette retailer in the United States would mean about $1.5 to $2 million of daily revenue. And if you converted about half of 1% of all the smokers in the US, which is a lot lower than maybe my ballpark estimate, you get about $200 million of annual revenue from this as well. In terms of cigarette dynamics, one of the biggest things, and this might be related to the state of the economy right now, but branded and discount cigarette brands are gaining a lot more traction and market share. As you can see here, the deep discount cigarettes have grown in about 100 basis points over the last year. Premium has dropped about -30, but the trend is that premium cigarette brands are dropping in favorability and deep discount brands are going a lot higher. And then in terms of e-cigarette growth, 80% of nicotine sales in convenience stores are still cigarettes, and over 60% of e-cigarette users are not current smokers. And going back to some of the data points before, there is a really strong likelihood that when you do get into vaporizing and things like that, you do move into combustible cigarettes, unfortunately, afterwards. Going into the beyond tobacco experience, and yeah, it's so hard to convey, how great this tastes. And again, I haven't tried it myself, so I can't attest to how much it tastes like a normal cigarette. I'm sorry, I love YouTube, but I'm not going to smoke a real cigarette for you guys just to make the comparison. But Brett's experience, he says, for sure it's very close to real cigarettes. He mentioned too that he's given it to about 20 friends. About 19 out of 20 said that it tastes just like the real thing. But yeah, basically in terms of what TAAT themselves have to say about the product, it's nearly identical, the same product packaging and size, the audible crackling sound of the base material when it's being lit. While burning, it emits a pleasant scent that doesn't stick to clothing as much. I noticed that as well. It does smell like a tobacco cigarette when it is burning, but it doesn't linger on clothing nearly as much. They're working on a patent-pending base material refinement process that makes it taste just like realistic tobacco. And then, of course, it satisfies that hand-to-mouth experience and motor habits of a real cigarette. Like, it really feels like a real cigarette in your hands, the same length, it's got the filter and all that. And so a lot of the time when it comes to cigarettes, especially in places like Europe and, in the days of Mad Men, it was kind of a look thing, right? And now, vapes are the new cool and all that, but it mimics that authentic cigarette experience, which is something that's kind of interesting. In terms of their patent process, they go through a 14-step process to make the hemp smell and taste like tobacco. They're patenting all of these refinement processes, so when it comes to competition eventually coming into the space, they're going to be miles behind TAAT in this regard. And then, yeah, basis of their whole TAAT experience, unique, high-quality cigarettes, hemp-based. They're a lot lower priced, $4.99 or so a pack in Ohio. No nicotine. They have the trademarks in about 50 countries, which is great. They have 3 flavors right now: original, smooth, and menthol. Menthol, I don't believe, is legal in Canada, or to have that flavor in a tobacco cigarette, but it's a very popular flavor nonetheless. In terms of manufacturing and distribution, they're primarily situated in Las Vegas right now. They have secondary manufacturing in, I believe, San Diego. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think we did a video for them there. And yeah, so they ship pallets kind of in wholesale quantities to vendors and wholesalers, and they use other existing tobacco sales channels to promote this product as well. So it's sold alongside other tobacco products. It can maybe have a bit of a flashier banner too because they aren't subject to those regulations. And right now, if you're in Ohio, there is no other hemp cigarette on the market like TAAT. It's a one-of-a-kind product, and I imagine there is no competition for at least the nearby future. But if everything goes according to plan, they're going to be having this one-of-a-kind product in every kind of American state, hopefully by the end of 2021. They have a key partnership with a company called Crossmark. They are a sales agency that has relationships with about 100,000 convenience stores across the United States. They support in-store acceptance, merchandising. They work with helping retailers reorder the TAAT products. They offer a lot of analytical stuff. So this partnership just came out, which is pretty bullish for them because they are having a partner now with a ton of experience in the tobacco industry, selling cigarettes and other products to convenience stores. In terms of moving sales, again, they are right now just in Ohio. It's a bit of a more dense smoking market. The products are in about 150 stores in Ohio, and 60% of the stores have already reordered the product in the 4 weeks that they've been selling it, which is pretty good uptake so far. And they are able to have an e-commerce strategy in promoting these products as well, which is a bit different from normal cigarette companies, which are a bit restricted by regulations from doing so. They have sold their own direct-to-customer, about $150,000 of sales and about 6,000 buyers in the first 48 hours, about 36,000 page views. So soft start, but again, you can just see that the demand is already there for this brand that you probably haven't heard of already. They're able to, again, market this a little bit more ethically. Of course, they're selling to legal age smokers. They're highly targeting people. They're doing ads at things like gas stations. They deliver ads to pre-qualified customers, point of sales ads. They don't go through Google and Facebook, so they're saving money in that regard because the cost per click is very expensive for those. And they're doing things like brick and mortar channels as well. Some of the ads you can kind of see here, a little stylish. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm a marketing guy. I don't know about their marketing strategy right now. It's like a bunch of hipsters and then TAAT. I don't know if that sells cigarettes. Feel the cool, all things are possible. I think people don't know what this is. They think it's just like a normal cigarette at first, and maybe that's the way of getting to people. But from a marketing standpoint, I think there has to be more education about the product. People nowadays are, vegan, gluten-free, and all that, and probably think the same way about their cigarettes eventually at one point or another. So I think getting that angle of marketing is probably going to be a little bit more beneficial as well, and I'm sure they're doing something along that line, but for now, not crazy on their marketing, let's just say that. In terms of their management team, and I'll go over this a bit later, but you got Seti Coscarella, he's the CEO, he's from Philip Morris, so he's a lot of experience there. Tim Corkum, also from Philip Morris, about 20 years of experience there. Joel Dumaresque, a lot of experience in investment banking, and also is a key partner with TAAT in another way in Canada, which we'll get into later. And then Joe Deegan, and I believe he owns about 10% of the outstanding shares, who kind of founded and did the R&D and the formulations for this product. So yeah, really interesting team. Some more on their advisory board. I'm not going to dive into that stuff. You can look it up yourself. But yeah, they're creating win-win economics. Goes from TAAT, goes to the distributor, retailer, consumer. Much better margins than real cigarettes, which is great for everyone. Program capital markets approach. So a lot of the time when you have these US-based companies, because they can't go onto the NASDAQ or the NYSE right away, they start by listing in Canada. They have an OTC stock, which I believe is TOBAF in the US. And yeah, their headquarters are in terms of the investment side, are in Canada. They have a lot of little investors on board. I believe another capital fund, actually that's local, owns about 5% of the company as well. They have done quite a few capital raises prior to going more public or finishing their reverse takeover in August, and they've had one raise since. We'll dive into the whole dilution thing because I think that's something that is a very valid concern to bring up about a company like this. In terms of meeting benchmarks, yeah, they want to be a highly profitable, high margin business. And we'll dive into the cash on their balance sheet just really shortly, but they are not taking the cannabis in Canada approach, which is, raise as much money as possible and just try and be everywhere at once and build massive facilities and this and that. They're taking it step by step, and they're trying to do this legitimately as if cash flow isn't endless in this zero interest environment. And I think that's really respectable. Since they're the only one in the space, I don't think the fire is under their ass as much as if they were in a very competitive space and they want to kind of be one of the big boys. So they're taking their time. They're focusing on just the little things like growth in their volume, getting the reordering through their distributors better, and working one-on-one at a smaller scale to kind of expand this naturally rather than just doing absurd SPACs and capital raises and just flooding the company with money to just produce billions of cigarettes overnight. I like that approach when it comes to investing. I think it's better to take your time. Not saying that this company is going to take forever to get where they're getting still, but just that approach in general, a lot better than what the Aurora Cannabises of the world have done. And yeah, so that's basically it for the investor presentation. And so I've kind of come up with a few reasons why I am bullish. And some of it's just repeating what we've kind of gone over here. But basically, the number one thing that stood out to me first about this company is that they have this beyond tobacco and beyond nicotine trademark. And I don't think you can really underestimate that. I think Beyond Meat as a brand within a year and a half has become kind of this like effervescent thing that everyone kind of knows about. And so aligning yourself with that Beyond brand, let's say, is a really good head start for them. It's on their packaging and everything. So I think that's great. The other big thing is that no other hemp cigarette companies are doing what TAAT is. There are other hemp cigarette companies, but they're literally the ones packed with CBD and THC meant to get you high like a kite, not replicate the flavor and simulation of a cigarette. I do believe that there will be other competitors in this space eventually, but for now there are not. And I think that's kind of what makes TAAT a bit special. Again, diving into what I was just saying a couple minutes ago, they're not digging this deep hole of debt. They have $11 million in cash or cash equivalents on their balance sheet. They don't have debt. They're not making a ton of revenue right now because the company is very small and just in Ohio, but they're not taking out, $100 million shelf offerings, right? And digging these deep holes that would make some of these other cannabis investments pretty questionable. So I think that's really interesting as well. Let's just say when you're creating a product like this from scratch and you have all these refinement techniques, you need to have really good protocol regulations and standards, because if you just open up a bunch of facilities, you might make a shitty product that's not consistent, or if you don't, keep this stuff under the wraps, people will take your formulations and run off with them as well. So they need to take their time to build out this stuff. They've expressed very clearly that that's what they're doing. They don't want to blow this up and ruin their golden goose. And I think that's really respectable, and another reason why I'm very, very bullish on this company. And of course, I've done the mental math on, where this grows. And of course, you can extrapolate this and that and all that, but the bar is very low for this to become a billion-dollar company. That's about 3x from here. I think this can become a billion-dollar company easily. Give it like $100 million of revenue, and this could be a billion-dollar company in terms of the stock price being at around, $10 to $12 Canadian per share. So I think in terms of asymmetric upside, and when I say asymmetric, I mean you put in $5, the most you can lose is 5 because it goes to 0, but the potential is your 5 can turn into 10 or 15 or 20 or 25 or 100. And I think TAAT is one of those companies, and that's exactly why I'm sharing this video with everyone and kind of making it in the first place. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about what TAAT the product is like. And while I haven't smoked it, my friend Brett was kind enough to give me a sample, and he did a little bit of a review of it himself, which I think is awesome. I'm so glad I was able to put this in this video. And yeah, it can never replace the real thing. You can't smell through YouTube yet, but hopefully this is as close as that would be. So we're gonna dive a little bit into the executive team and some details about the stock now with TAAT. The CEO of TAAT at the moment is Seti Coscarella, and Seti, before he came to TAAT, was a reduced risk strategist for Philip Morris. And he's very interesting. We've done a couple of videos with him as well, as I mentioned before, and I'll link some of them below. But what I really like about Seti is you just listen to him speak, and he's a very straight shooter. I think having, you know, kind of like a pragmatic CEO in a company and an industry that is just getting started is really good. Maybe somebody who's not too diamond-eyed at kind of making their company worth a billion or $1 trillion in like a couple months. He's a veteran of the industry, and I think that's, you know, it's kind of rare in growth companies. So I think that's great. He also has a lot of hustle, and that's something that you don't really see from some of these smaller cap companies, is CEOs who come out and make videos just talking and answering people's questions every week or so. And so he has a YouTube channel down below. TAAT has their own YouTube channel where they've made this media. They're really spending a lot of time talking to investors and answering questions, because, you know, the question that everyone would have on a product like this is like, what does it taste like, right? When you're going to invest in something, you want to be close to the product or the service. And he talks a lot about that and the refinement process and, you know, where the company is going in that regard. And that's, you know, fantastic. You also have Joe Deegan, and I'm not going to go into all the executives, but these are the two that are the most important. He's kind of the, let's just say, the visionary behind the brand. He owns about 10% or so of the shares. He's launched his own vape brand, J Juice. It sold in about all over America and I think 26 other countries. So he's had prior business success. He's developed the formulations. He has a very intimate, close relation with the cigarette industry and smoking and all that. So if you can't try the product yourself, you can rest assured knowing that the people making this product are not people who don't understand smoking. He really does. He understands that industry, and they have done a lot of work on these formulations before they decided to take this company public. Just some other information. When it comes to the market cap of the company, it's about 300 million US. That means there's about 92 million shares in the float, so it makes it a relatively low float company. There has been no significant insider selling in this stock as of the making of this video of March 2021. And yeah, as we're going to dive into next, we're going to talk about some of the risks. But again, I do think these private placements and, you know, the dilution will have to continue because this company will need cash to scale up. They won't be able to just, you know, have the cash flow generating from the product enough to build it out to where they want to be. But the goal is by the end of 2021 to have it in a lot more states across the US. Okay, so to wrap things up, we're going to go into some of the risks of investing in TAAT, because like all things that are asymmetrical that have the potential to be a lot, you know, 5, 10, 20 times higher, there have to be risks involved. This is an entrepreneurial journey for this company, and for investing, it's putting a lot of faith into people and a company that really hasn't been around for a long time. But to dive into some of the finer details, let's go into what I've written up here. And one of the biggest challenges with TAAT is the lack of regulation clarity long term. So right now, you might consider this a cannabis company because the primary thing that they're handling is hemp. However, hemp is kind of classified a little bit differently in the US. Hemp is kind of legal, and that's why you can go to different states and get little hemp-like CBD low content products where you couldn't get things like THC and things like that. A lot of the investment thesis in TAAT relies on the absence of FDA regulation on hemp-like cigarettes or hemp cigarettes. When it comes to kind of alternative products like vaping, you've had things pop up like these kind of vitamin E vapors that have come to cause deaths and things like that. And so when things like that happen with a product that is kind of relatively new to the market, scrutiny comes in from lawmakers and regulators. And right now, we don't know the full scale of efficacy with hemp cigarettes. They're not FDA approved. They don't have to be FDA approved in order to sell it. And so if something terrible happens with somebody using the TAAT cigarettes, or information comes out that, you know, shows that it's potentially unhealthy, you have to stay up to date with the regulation when it comes to this stuff, because it could definitely affect the stock and how they're able to roll out this product across the US. There is, of course, other markets that they're going to get into. They've been big on promoting this product and the stock in Germany because there are a lot of smokers in Germany. But, you know, other countries are all going to have different regulations when it comes to hemp. In fact, even in Canada, where I'm filming this, you can't buy a TAAT cigarette. And the reason for that is because it has hemp, it's classified as a marijuana product. Therefore, it could only be sold in dispensaries. You couldn't sell this at a 7-Eleven or a Max or anything like that. So just something to keep in mind. They're going to have regulatory challenges everywhere they go. That's going to make up a good portion of some of their expenses moving forward. That's not really factored into their costs right now of capital. Stock promotion is another one. And I'm not saying, as an advertiser, I shouldn't be appalled by people pushing a stock, but they have spent a lot of money on newswire press releases. They do a press release almost once a week, and it's kind of their way of keeping investors updated. But, they've also paid YouTubers to kind of review the product. They've paid to get on certain shows, and they do the BNN rounds and all this stuff. And it's not a red flag, but it's just, it shows a little bit that like they're still in this stage where they just need to get more investors on board. And so I'm not being paid to make this video. I'm just doing this for free, but eventually I'd like that stuff to stop, because giant companies that are on the NASDAQ and the NYSE, where we hope this company might be one day, they're not out paying a ton of money to promote their stocks. They're just letting the company and the product speak for itself. And I hope TAAT gets to that place, within the next few years, let's just say. Another big one is the additional equity financing that should be factored in. With almost all new products, within the first 2 years, there are a lot of odds of dilution. And so the last equity raise they did was in October. So it's been about 6 months since the last, let's just say, equity raise. I think for a company that is growing as fast as they are, they have 11 million on the balance sheet. It should be expected at least this year. There should be another raise or two potentially. And that, of course, you don't know what you're getting. They can raise at, $3, they can raise at $4, they can raise at $2. When people do capital raises, it's sometimes when they need the cash, and it's sometimes when they can strategically take advantage of a high stock price to issue more shares and capital that way. So as a shareholder, expect to be diluted on, but the thesis is still there that this company's valuation goes up. And, in terms of dilution, just hope that it's not an extravagant amount. Now, this one is relatively new, and I want to just preface this by saying that I haven't done a ton of deep research into this, and I don't know if I'm really going to come up with, a specific area of terribleness from this observation. TAAT right now is in the US, but they are also hoping to launch this product in Canada. And so where they get their hemp from in the US is going to be different from where they get it in Canada. And right now they are getting their cannabis, and they've just signed an agreement with this company called Christina Lake Cannabis, which is located in, I think, the Okanagan in British Columbia. And Christina Lake Cannabis is to be the provider of all of TAAT's cannabis. Now, where this is a bit of a conflict of interest is that this current CEO of Christina Lake Cannabis is Joel Dumaresque, and he is also one of the, I believe he's like one of the financial officers or directors on TAAT's board. And he was the former CEO of TAAT before SETI was in. And in fact, his presence with TAAT goes so far back that I believe since TAAT came to be as kind of like this reverse merger takeover, he was part of the company that was that takeover, which was Mallory Energy, which was like a failed, oil and gas exploration or drilling company. So Joel Dumaresque's involvement goes back pretty far with TAAT. They've kind of brought this new company, Christina Lake Cannabis, to the public sphere as well. And I just think there might be a conflict of interest there. I don't quite know. I'd love for that to kind of, be answered in some way. But the deal smells a little bit. Joel has a good amount of shares. I believe he owns 0.5% to 1% of all of TAAT. And so, he has some power over it in some way because he has the Canadian side and because he has this history kind of building this company that is now in SETI's, let's just say, hands. So a little bit odd, but again, come to that conclusion as you will. I highly implore if you want to dive deeper into this, that you do the research yourself, you check out the SEDAR filings, and just make sure everything is kosher before you make an investment decision in this company. And then one of the biggest ones too, and we'll just end on this one as kind of the final point, is that there is buyout potential for this company, and that would limit the upside severely. This company is valued at $300 million right now. But let's just say a company like Philip Morris comes in tomorrow and they're like, we'll buy TAAT for twice, whatever the current market cap is, and the investors on board decide to go for it. You now own shares of Philip Morris, a company that has not had stock growth in about 10 years. So it caps the upside for sure if they sell early. And this has been a question that a few people have brought up with TAAT, and I'll link to a video down below. But essentially, SETI, Coscarella, and Tim Corcoran have come out and basically said, if we can't get this company to a $5 billion valuation, then we will have been considered a failure. So they're hoping they can at least 10x it before they get to a point where they want to, potentially sell the company or get absorbed. And then there's also possibilities too of this company buying out other small companies as well, other brands, to kind of, you know, grow kind of that presence of TAAT. They might just not have TAAT on all their packaging. It might be another brand in the future as well. But yeah, that's about everything with TAAT. I hope you guys thought that was valuable. I hope you learned some stuff from it. If you're interested in investing in it, again, before I could recommend that, I would say go in and do your own research. I can only cover so much in this video without making it like 20 hours long. One of the reasons I'm really bullish about this company is I think at the end of the day, they're doing a really kind of noble thing, and that is taking the cigarette and trying to make a healthier alternative to it that pretty much replaces, you know, all of the terrible things about tobacco cigarettes. It's, again, very similar to what Beyond Meat is doing by making their meat alternative that tastes just like a real burger, but without having to slaughter cows or pigs. And for this, without having to pick tobacco or get people hooked on nicotine. So yeah, if you like this video, if you learned something today, give it a like down below. It really helps with the algorithm and getting this video out to more people. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit that little bell notification as well. I saw that only about 6% of all the subscribers on this channel actually have that notification active. So you guys are probably not getting notifications as new videos come out. So be sure to activate that down below, as we'll be putting these videos out on a pretty regular basis. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you learned something. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the other side of TAAT. Who knows where we'll be a year from now, but probably up. I'll hope. Take care.